All right, so our next speakers will be discussing AI research in healthcare. So please welcome Ramesh Raskar, Associate Professor of Media Arts and Science at the MIT Media Lab. Kristen Yeom, Associate Professor at Stanford and moderator, Dr. Mona Flores, Global Leader for Hospitals and Clinical Partnerships at NVIDIA, to the stage.
Okay, so thank you for having us here today. I thought I was going to do the introductions, so maybe I'll just still do them. I'm very honored here to be with two professors from MIT and Stanford. We have Dr. Kristen Yeom. Kristen is a radiologist. She is a board certified in radiology and neuroradiology. And today she works with pediatric neurological diseases. And then we have Dr. Ramesh Sarkar. Ramesh is at the MIT lab, at the MIT Media Lab. And Ramesh has had he concentrates on AI and imaging at the MIT Media Lab. He is the recipient of many awards, including the MIT Review Award. He had founded and co-founded and advised many companies in the AI field. So I'm very happy to have them both today to talk about the intersection of AI and healthcare and going forward. So I'm going to start with you, since I know more about what you do probably than what Ramesh does here. So Kristen, as a radiologist working every day with medical images and trying to deliver patient care, where do you see pain points that radiology might help you? And let me just preface that by saying, can you guys hear me? Okay. You know, the conversation when I first started working in AI was like, oh my God, AI is going to replace radiologists. I see today a transformation in that messaging. And today we're saying AI is augmenting radiologists. It is helping radiologists do their best work. And this is my question to you, is like, if we're going to help you do your best work, what are those pain points that we need to concentrate on?
So I guess for those of you who may or may not familiar with what radiologists do, we're physicians and we take care of our patients by way of using imaging methods. And historically, doctors, would diagnose diseases doing patient exams. And somehow with the advances in technology, scanner, efficiency, speed, over the past decade and plus, we're now able to image diseases in ways that we just never knew we could. And even use the digital information for prognostication and therapeutic options, and just all of those things are now possible. So this is what radiologist now does, more than looking at a chest x-ray, looking for lung cancer or pneumonia. And we kind of get a little bit unhappy too. We're happy that things are going well, but at the same time, it's almost becoming so huge with the amount of data, with the faster scanners and the variety of modalities, it is almost becoming, humans are being asked to do what machines might do better. So there are many pain points that we could tackle, use AI to help all of us. And the ultimate goal is to help our patients, whether it's disease detection or helping to figure out what therapy is the best option. And so we don't think about this because we just kind of think, oh, bots can come and look at a chest x-ray and figure things out. Well, there's a lot that goes on even before that chest x-ray even comes into play. For instance, when a doctor has a patient come in with cough, you have lots of options, not just chest x-ray. You have CT, you have MR, you have all these options. A lot of doctors don't even know what is the best way to even image a patient, right? So there are, for instance, protocoling is a huge thing. I think we can find ways to figure out what is, depending on who you are, male, female, age, what ethnic background, what symptoms you have, what is the best optimum imaging modality? Because depending on what you get, we may or may not see that disease that could have been detected using that particular imaging modality. So there is a protocol aspect, which also is done manually. So you might be shocked to figure that out, but this is done manually. When someone comes in and goes, gosh, I want to order a CT head, rule out whatever, hemorrhage or blood or whatever, the doctor, radiologist sits there actively and figures out, should it be an MRI? Should it be a CT? Should it be this other thing? That is done manually. And there are a lot of errors, potentially, that could happen at that point. Do we even give contrast or not? So protocoling is huge. And then after that, we have massive amount of data. And when you have massive amount of data that humans are asked to look at, it would be really nice to have the ones that are super urgent kind of queue up high on your queue. So you tackle that first, right? The guy who's really in a bad shape needs to be looked at before the other person who, we could look at it as an outpatient, at a later time point. So triage is a big deal. And what about automation of things that are considered very labor intensive? So, people go to work in the morning, they're more fresh, you have your coffee, you're doing good. Towards the end of the day, you're just tired. You had your lunch, phone calls are happening. This is reality. So even the most expert, super smart guy, at the end of the day, might miss that lung nodule that we don't want to miss in any of our patients. And so humans, we get fatigued. So there's a part where labor-intensive things could be automated, potentially. And we're not just talking about lung nodules, but also like aneurysms, right? Or blood clots, or little things that in the sea of image data, because it's not just a thick section. Now we're talking about super high res, sub-millimeter level of imaging and sea of data, looking for that little Waldo. Find Waldo. It's very hard. And then finally, after all of that, in addition to automation, also bridging knowledge gap, right? So you think all your scans are being read by the most expert guy, but that's not always true, is it? Because some people are more specialized in the pediatrics, or maybe adult GI system, or maybe the mammography. So it depends on who you get that day. That the read might have huge variability. And so we'd like to use the machine learning and all the knowledge that we acquire, use that to bridge the knowledge gap, so that it's not by chance, who you get that day, you happen to get the disease diagnosed correctly. So I think there's so many pain points, and not just diagnosing one disease, but many. And finally, I forgot to mention, what about the critical items that somehow doesn't get relayed to your doctor, right? So we found this little nodule, but doctors were busy, and that information just got missed. Things like that happen. So actionable items so that we can have safeguard procedures in place.
Perfect. So I heard protocoling, I heard triage, I heard some diagnostics, but especially for very specific, repetitive things that you're doing, like looking at the lung nodule.
Right.
And also integrating all of the information and really democratizing healthcare, in that you're able now, if you are in Alabama or you are in Palo Alto, you're able to get the same level of expertise looking at your radiology data.
Yeah, and I think that's what they mean by augmenting, right?
Correct.
So, and bridge that knowledge gap.
Correct. So this question is for you, Ramesh. And you work, one of the domains that you are working on is privacy-preserving automated machine learning. And I want to concentrate here on the automated part of machine learning. How do you see that helping in some of the pain points that Kristen brought up in helping radiology and helping advance, healthcare in general and radiology specifically?
Yeah, I think if you think about AutoML, can everybody hear me? If you think about automating machine learning, I think Kristen already hinted at many of the open opportunities in that space. When you talk about the fact that these things are still manual, what would it take to codify that knowledge and make it more and more automatic? So in fact, we can give superpower abilities to doctors. And so right now, the field of automated machine learning has broadly focused on two main areas in software as we know it, which is how can we tune the parameters of an existing machine learning model, especially a deep learning model. And the second aspect is how do you actually change the architecture itself so that it gets better and better, it's right for that task. And these two have been kind of traditional ways to look at how do we automate machine learning. But now what we are seeing is this notion of automatically creating an algorithm. The dream would be, I just have this raw data that comes out of, Kristen's lab for a patient. You just throw it in a mix, unsorted, kind of not data wrangled, has lots of errors, has some labels, but some labels are poor quality. And then the dream is that if you have a lot of such data, maybe 1 million or 10 million patient records, automatically it can choose the right network. It can even train a new network. It can give you confidence. It can explain why it's making certain decisions. and in the end, choose one that's right for the task, right? So, and that's almost like sending a radiologist to med school. I think that dream is, we're making a lot of progress in that direction. So although in the beginning it was more about kind of just the software engineering aspect of it, of tuning parameters and choosing the right models, I think the overall field is going very far beyond. So those of you who say, oh, no, but we need to hire a lot of people for doing data wrangling and data cleanup, I think those tasks will mostly get automated very soon. If you're worried about, hey, I'm mixing up the age column with the weight column and there is no machine learning algorithm can figure it out, if you as a human being can figure out that these entries are mislabeled, a computer can very easily figure that out as well, right? So the notion that, oh, the search space is so large that the permutation combination of all the possible ways I can interpret this data, and again, all the possible ways I can train with this data is so large that we need human intelligence. I think we can start chipping away at that notion. And the notion of automated ML is that although the possibilities are so large in how we should treat the data and how we should train the models, we can in fact find really good algorithms that very quickly descend through this valley and figure out the right solution. In fact, what we have seen is right from AlexNet from 2012, and you have other favorite net like ResNets and Inception. These automated ML nets are better than all of them, and they have been completely generated by computers. And so I think as long as we have data, even if it's not cleaned up, actually we can make a lot of progress. And more importantly, it can also explain why it's taking some of those decisions.
So it's making it easier and it's making it more explainable. But,
Exactly.
but you have to agree that you have to have a very specific thing that you're looking at, a very specific problem that you're trying to solve. You're not trying to boil the ocean. You're solving one specific problem.
Absolutely.
Right? And
That's true. That's true with machine learning in general. We can always
Correct.
solve the known unknowns, but we cannot solve the unknown unknowns.
Exactly. So Kristen, this goes back to you actually. He's talking about AutoML and being able to prepare the data and making it easier to ingest this data into models, and even like going to doing the hyperparameter tuning automatically and choosing the correct network architecture automatically. Do you envision, how do you envision radiologists taking advantage of that? And do you see a role for radiologists actually using maybe perhaps AutoML to create your own solutions?
Right. So I think it's interesting because there's a lot of exciting work that comes out, and sometimes there's a little disconnect between physicians who actually are at the forefront of direct patient care and then our basic scientists. And I think that in the future, the radiologists and other physicians need to be actively involved in how we want this interfaced in our daily practice, so that this amazing inferencing tool isn't somehow in that corner and it's just missed in your data. So there's a lot of discussion now, because we have models that you guys know about, like chest X-ray, this, that, bone age, and it's great that at least on papers they work, they seem to work. Although that's a totally another question as to how do you even define that it worked, right? What metric are you using that? Are we talking about human level, superhuman? What is our ground truth? That's another topic, but in terms of just even having that model and deploying it, there's so much controversy amongst doctors. Well, how do you even present it? Do you want it integrated in our official medical system? Or do you want it in that corner where you kind of look at it on a separate window, right? Or do you want to integrate it in the patient report? And what if that actually changes what the doctor was going to say? What is that implication? Is that okay, especially when this material is not FDA approved yet, right? And so, and the reason we talk about this is as new models emerge, we don't want to just accept it and use it. It's great, but we as radiologists know that there are so many differences in scanning parameters, and the data output from the scanners are highly heterogeneous. Like if you had to look at the vendors, the Siemens, GE, Philips, these are the biggies, Toshiba, the image output, pixel-based image output intensity, they're very, very different. And so model coming from one institution, can I really use that here that was developed in, let's say, Boston, and I bring it out here in Palo Alto? Is it usable? Well, we want to test it. But even at the testing point, how do we integrate it into our system so that if it alters the clinician's decision, on an item that's not even approved or it's not been vetted. How does that work? And that kind of opens up a lot of ethics related questions, and people have meetings and meetings after this, and it's really about then you get a way around it by getting some kind of like a quality control, patient improvement kind of a study. You formulate a study to do this, but this is an ongoing discussion. How you interface into your clinical system, how you deal with that information that was unexpected is another question, and it's evolving. And I think radiologists have to be directly involved. And also, how we use this to integrate with our surgical navigation. We were talking about diagnostics.
Yeah,
but a lot
that's
of this,
totally different.
Totally different, but people are now starting to want to use this automated, generated anatomic structures integrated with the surgical navigation so that we can be more safe when we put a needle in human body, right? We don't want to hurt that vessel that could cause stroke, right? So the surgeons are very interested in integrating into their navigation system and how we visualize this. But radiologists need to work with the surgeons and the other doctors, as well as with our computer scientists.
So basically, we definitely need the domain expertise of the physicians, specifically for the work integration back into the workflow.
Right, and then
after we develop all of these.
And deployment. And then we deploy it, we validate it, papers have to come out, and then we also have to start thinking about future research, right? Maybe beyond imaging, but because there's pathology. We have data that are completely unstructured in the electronic health records. So there's all of that information we can
So there's
bring
definitely
together.
a lot to work with. And one aspect that plays into this is the privacy of the data and access to data. And I want to go back to you, Ramesh, because you also work on, in your automated ML work, you work on privacy preserving ML. Have you seen any specific tools that you can use in order to ensure this privacy as we develop things for healthcare and as we do research in healthcare?
Yeah, I think privacy is such an important aspect of it, but also I think it's misunderstood. I think people mean different things, and when it comes to very sensitive data like health data or finance data and so on, different regimes. So if you look at our MIT webpage in our group, we kind of define privacy kind of from P0 to P5, very much like autonomous vehicles are kind of L1 to L5. And P0, of course, would be no privacy, and P1 would be, only a small group of people can actually see it in its raw form. And P1 would be, you can anonymize it using some mechanism so that it's visible in its raw form, but doesn't seemingly embed the privacy. And P5 and P2 and P3 and so on would be where a computer can see it, but a human cannot see it. And the P4 would be two computers can see it. And P5, which is what we care about, is where even the computer of your startup or your company or your hospital system cannot see that data. So just think about this. You cannot see the X-ray that's coming out of an X-ray machine or MRI from MRI machine. So even a computer cannot see the data. And I think we are almost there. I think it's a little bit disappointing that the health system still believes that at P0, P1, which is either limiting a small group of people to see the raw data anonymously, or P2, where it's anonymized, is good enough, which is disappointing, frankly. And we can go much beyond that. And that's why we're seeing all kinds of hacks. Most insurance companies are getting hacked. Millions of records are out there. Some of them are being held ransom. There are breaches. It's just a mess. And that's still, we're talking about the privacy of an individual. Then we have privacy of organization and privacy with kind of a geopolitical ramifications. So if you know, for example, the health of people in a given company, how would you feel about that? So I think there are many applications when we talk about what we mean by privacy and what the levels are. So here we are talking about kind of the future of computing and AI, and we have an opportunity to jump straight to P5, where it's completely private. And then the natural question you would ask is, looks like you're giving up some utility, because if a doctor cannot see the data and I cannot share the data amongst other people. And clearly for machine learning, I need millions of records. If you're telling me that a machine learning system doesn't have access to millions of records, how are you even going to train such algorithms? And I think that's the magic of privacy-preserving learning, because now there are a completely new set of algorithms that allow you to do machine learning without looking at raw data. And there are kind of three main methods that have emerged. Just a kind of a 30-second tutorial. You may have heard about terms like differential privacy or homomorphic encryption or federated learning or split learning. And these are all techniques that are looking at this problem in a different way. And we have a very nice tutorial on our website. But very briefly, differential privacy is a way to obfuscate the data, add some noise so that you don't reveal the raw data, but it's still good enough to do some aggregate queries. It's good for statistics and some inference. Encryption methods, so-called homomorphic encryption methods, also allow you to do some statistics, but doesn't allow you to do inference or machine learning. And there's a method in the middle, which I would call wisdom mining, which means that you're mining the wisdom from every raw image, let's say a radiology data set or a pathology data set. It's mining the wisdom without exposing the raw data. And the two techniques that have emerged in this space, one is called federated learning, which is being promoted and co-invented by scientists at Google. And another technique, which is called split learning, which is the one that's coming from our group at MIT. And they have similar flavor in the sense that they're more suitable for machine learning as opposed to statistical analysis. And one focuses more on the notion that you have millions of devices, like you have millions of phones, which is, I think, better for federated learning. And split learning, which we are doing at MIT, is good for health data, where you have very few entities and they have some significant amount of data, kind of an enterprise setting there. So if we get into this notion that we can actually we can actually create very powerful machine learning models without exchanging raw data, that kind of turns all the workflow of HIPAA and regulations and how legal agreements are done and how business development is done. It just turns everything on its head. And on top of that, if you have AutoML, now you can really go to a small, tiny rural hospital and say, just dump all your data in this AutoML system. You don't even need the experts to deal with it. And on top of that, we can mine your data. We can do the wisdom mining of your data without you ever sending even one patient record. So that's the interesting part in this. I think we are very close to delivering many of the solutions. Some of the startups have already started exploring in this space. Now the question comes down to what Kristen said earlier, which is, hey, this is good when everything is being done by computers, but what if you do need that human touch to it? And I think that's kind of the next phase of the research of, now we have privacy-preserving machine learning, but how do we make it, again, compatible with human experts, in this case, doctors?
Without losing much in the translation there.
Exactly.
So that's awesome.
I mean, the geeks would say, any field goes through kind of three phases, kind of improve, transform, and disrupt. And the improve, we sugarcoat all our messages, saying, oh, it's fine. It's just to augment humans. And transform, we eliminate the jobs. And in disrupt, we have a whole new economy that emerges and creates new jobs. So right now, we're kind of the improve phase. We're sugarcoating and saying, oh, no, it's just a tool to make doctors be better. But in fact, I think we have a long path ahead of us. On the other hand, that's how geeks think about it. But I think the way medical system thinks about it is, it says that actually we have keys to the kingdom, and we are going to decide how this revolution is going to play out.
Well, we'll see. Actually, that brings me to my next question. We're almost out of time here. Just very briefly, Ramesh and Kristen, I would love to hear your views on this. 5 years from now, what do you think we're going to be talking to in terms of AI in healthcare?
You want to start?
I think it is being transformed. I don't think that we're going to be just stuck on imaging. We're going to own it, and it's just going to improve or augment. I think it will change, and beyond imaging, I think we'll integrate pathology and other medical data, not just image data. Probably, I think radiology will become a diagnostic informatics with clinical decision support, where we can actually harness a lot of unstructured data that are out there, so that when a patient comes in, age 35, male, history of diabetes or whatever, somehow that gets integrated into intelligent scanning optimized for dose, et cetera, and then all the other things that we talked about. But I think it will transform, and I think that's what I think will happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds great. How about you, Ramesh?
I see transformation at 3 different scales: at the individual scale, at hospital/organization scale, and also at kind of the population scale. And I think right now we think of kind of health ID and health lockers for individual scale, and maybe EHRs at organization scale, and then maybe like GWAS studies, epidemic studies at the population scale. But I think thanks to the data and ML revolution, I think these terms will become very obsolete. They will start looking like typewriters and what we could do with them. And very soon we'll get into the whole regime of kind of a digital health ID and a kind of a health OS and a health grid, very similar to kind of an energy grid. And if you have a rooftop solar, it's communicating with rest of the ecosystem in real time and it's doing an arbitrage. And when you have a true health OS, kind of a health operating system, as opposed to so-called kind of learning health system, not health LS, but health OS, you will see that Kristen will be able to sit in her office and look at a patient record. Of course, she doesn't have access to the raw data because of privacy, but she'll be able to look at a representation of that, the wisdom from it, and she'll be able to write a query saying, I see this unique patient. I'm willing to spend $3 right now, or whatever the amount of currency she has, and I would like to see 3,000 patients that are very similar to this. And they all come in, they all get munched, a new machine learning model gets trained using AutoML, and there are 3 different pre-trained algorithms that kind of bet for the $3 that she's willing to pay for. In the meantime, she already has created 30 of her own, but these 3 are super good because they have been trained on millions of, let's say, X-ray images, plus the 30 that she has created more recently, and they're going to fight with each other, and she's going to get a few recommendations with a very beautiful kind of a user interface that says, this is what I should do, and then she can click on one, and there is a causal analysis that goes forward that says, this is what you would see a day from now, a month from now, 10 years from now for this patient. And depending on your risk tolerance and depending on the type of insurance you have and what the patient wishes, these are all the things you can do. So I think we're going to get into these 3 different phases of kind of, moving away from electronic health records and interaction with health system to health OS and health grid.
And I think that's a great vision and a very ambitious one, I must say. So, Kristen, can you see yourself practicing as a radiologist in this ecosystem that Ramesh described?
It'll be nice.
It's very futuristic.
It is, okay.
And I would love actually, because we are data starved. I mean, we have lots of data at Stanford. I have a lot of what we call data use agreements with many institutions throughout U.S. And it's been a blessing because everybody's just really interested in sharing and learning from each other. Mm-hmm. But we are, in a sense, some diseases. So we all talk about, pneumonia, lung cancer, breast cancer, the common diseases, and we want to fight that. But there are more the rare ones that get left behind, right? The diseases of childhood and the diseases that, autoimmune disease, and then they get left out because they're the ones, fewer data, mm-hmm. and I think it would benefit.
But there's fewer data, and there's not economy of scale in treating them too.
In fact, mm-hmm. I think Kristen's point is very valid, which mm-hmm. is maybe the earliest breakthroughs will come in these rare diseases, mm-hmm. so-called abandoned trials, because pharma companies that we talk to in our collaboration at MIT are very keen to actually donate their data. Mm-hmm. There's a very beautiful European pharma honest broker system that has emerged already, where pharma companies are already sharing all the toxic.
You're talking about Melody.
Mm-hmm. Sorry?
Are you talking about the Melody initiative?
There are 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And so they're already willing to share at least their failures, not successes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they can help each other out. Even competing companies are able to. And if you get in this honest broker model, kind of an impartial, honest broker that allows collaboration between untrusted parties with the right financial incentives, then I think we can go very, very far in this case. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many panels you have been on or discussions where the discussions, the question boils down to, but we can do so much good in this world, but we don't have data, or there's some kind of a data friction, and that's preventing us from going forward. I think time has come for us to, especially those of us who believe in computing and ML, to say that the time has come to stop making those excuses. And if even a single patient died because of the lack of care or lack of information, it's because we collectively failed to solve these problems. And I think we just have to make that pledge as a society that we will solve this problem. The technological solution is already here. The regulatory and the financial frameworks have to come in place. But I think this is the right audience. I think somebody here can probably come forward and kind of make it happen.
Correct, and you have to align all incentives from pharma to physicians to hospitals to insurance companies to everybody to want to solve this problem.
Absolutely,
right?
and we have our friends
Once we have that, we can do it.
Absolutely,
So,
and I think the challenge is going to be that, and I would love to hear from Kristen, which is, as I said, I know some people have keys to the kingdom right now, the health kingdom, and that's in a way stifling the innovation in this space. And most likely the solutions are going to emerge from somewhere else. Some of the startups that are out here that are exploring this space, or maybe one of the 5 big tech companies that could, your Amazon Echo at home could be your gateway to doing all these interactions, And I think the worry for many of us should be, if health data ecosystem emerges in the way that we're talking about here, and rest of the ecosystem keeps complaining about the data friction and regulatory issues and insurance and so on, somebody else is going to take the lead and become a dominant player, and that will be kind of a lose-lose for everyone.
Great. So I think we're out of time. So we got the sign. Thank you so much for having us here, and hopefully we can all change healthcare. So.